Delicious.
So I know I've done videos on looting in PUBG before, and so have several others, so today I wanted to try and put together the most comprehensive video about looting, the inventory system, and some general tips and tricks to help you become the absolute best at looting in PUBG. Since some of what this video is going to cover has already been covered by both myself and a few other content creators, I went ahead and placed some timestamps in the description so you can feel free to skip ahead if what's being discussed is something you're already familiar with. Either way, I hope that even experienced players can walk away having learned a thing or two. First up, let's go over the different ways to loot and when are the most appropriate times to use each method. The first method to go over is called F-looting. This refers to looking at the highlighted items on the ground and pressing F when prompted to pick them up. This is best used when picking up one or at most two items off the ground quickly. The reason you only want to do this for one or two items is due to the fact that when you press F to loot, the character model activates a looting animation that requires most, if not all of that animation to be played out before being able to pick up another item without first canceling the previous looting animation. So in situations when you're on the move needing to pick up something quickly, this method is preferred as to not hinder your movement and momentum. Next up is going to be tab looting, or looting while you're in the inventory screen. This is initiated by pressing either tab or I to open your inventory menu and navigating your items from within this screen. This is highly regarded as the fastest and most efficient way to loot as it bypasses the previously mentioned looting animation required to pick up each item, as well as being able to see and manage your inventory in real time. With that said, there are two variations of tab looting that can be used to acquire items. Method 1 is referred to as the click and drag method. This is achieved by clicking and holding an item from the ground and dragging it into your inventory. What makes this particular looting method so dominant is the ability to not only drag items into your inventory, but in the cases when you're looting guns or attachments, you have the option to drag them directly into either your desired weapon slots or onto the weapon that you're wanting to attach them to. Its only real limitation is the fact that when you're looting a weapon, you can't simply drag it into your inventory, but instead are forced to go a bit further and drag the weapon more towards your weapon slots in order to pick up the weapon properly. Method 2 is referred to as the right click and drag method. This is achieved by right-clicking one item on the ground and then quickly dragging an adjacent item into your inventory. This method has grown in popularity by many as it gives the perception that both items are placed into your inventory instantly and simultaneously. Now for the controversial bit of this video. The difference in looting speed between the click and drag and the right click and drag method is virtually non-existent. Meaning that if both are done correctly, the speed at which the items are looted and placed into your inventory for use doesn't actually make either method faster than one another. It all really comes down to accuracy and preference. The reason I mentioned that the right click and drag method gives the perception of instantaneously looting is because of a slight delay that is overlooked when performing this method of looting. What I mean by this is, when you initiate the right click, the character performs the looting animation on the item that was right-clicked and doesn't actually go into your inventory until the animation is complete, which is why you're only able to right-click one item at a time while looting this way. While this animation is happening though, you are able to pick up other items without canceling the previous animation. So if neither of these methods are actually faster than one another, why do some players prefer one method over the other? The simplest reason is due entirely to preference and how right-click and dragging can be easier and more accurate to achieve efficiently, especially in terms of picking up your first weapon upon landing. In the case of the click and drag method, you have to be able to click and drag each item accurately from the ground and into your inventory upwards of 3 to 4 times without failure. This can be tough for newer or less adept players as it requires a considerably higher amount of mouse movement to pull off effectively. In the case of the right click and drag method, this movement is lessened only needing to move your mouse upward to the next item for pickup from the previously right-clicked item. In both cases, however, each looting method takes practice to perfect in order to get the flow and timing right. By no means does this make one superior over the other, it's simply just two ways of achieving the same result. Where the right-click looting method is absolutely dominant over all other forms of looting is when you're looting a dead player or from an airdrop. While looting in either of these instances, right-clicking an item instantly places that item directly into your inventory, provided you have the room to pick them up. This can be incredibly useful when you're wanting to gather another player's loot quickly or needing to get in and out of a situation as fast as possible. The only time this may not be preferred is in cases when you're looting attachments for a weapon you currently have in your inventory. Using the previously mentioned click and drag method allows you the freedom to place those attachments directly onto the weapon of choice. Otherwise, simply right-clicking the attachments would only put them into your inventory and would require an additional step to place them onto a weapon. On the topic of using items from within the inventory screen, there are a handful of ways that you can use, manage, and manipulate items from within this screen. First is going to be using your healing items. While you can set individual hotkeys for each type of healing item or use the provided in-game healing item wheel, you can also simply right-click your desired healing item to initiate its use. Some other uses of right-clicking from within the inventory screen are right-clicking the different types of grenades in order to place them into your equipped grenade slot. The last and possibly most useful right-clicking use is in the case of equipping attachments to your weapon. Doing so places those attachments instantly onto whichever weapon those attachments would apply. What I mean by this is, if a particular attachment can only be applied to a specific weapon, such as a shotgun choke or a sniper rifle or DMR magazine, they will only be attached to those weapons. If the attachment can be applied to multiple weapon types, however, such as a scope or a grip, then those attachments will be placed onto whichever weapon you currently have equipped. One great tip for those looking to increase their speed and efficiency while managing their weapons and attachments from within the inventory screen is knowing how to instantly unequip all the attachments from a weapon. This really comes in handy when you're wanting to swap your weapon to another weapon that shares the same type of attachments. To do this, the default key bindings in-game are to hold Alt and then right-click the weapon you want to strip the attachments from. If you have the available space, those attachments will be transferred instantly into your inventory for use. Something to keep in mind, however, is that if you lack the available space, then those attachments will drop to the ground and require you to click and drag those attachments back onto the weapon you wish to attach them to. Once they are in your inventory, however, using the previously mentioned right-click attach method can instantly place them onto your equipped weapon. One attachment management tip for players is being aware of your available space during a game in which you may be holding a longer range scope that you intend to swap to a weapon in exchange for a shorter range one. If your available pack space is less than the space required to hold that larger scope, then the game will drop that scope from your inventory upon switching. If you aren't careful, you can misplace items this way and it may be too late when you realize what had happened. A good tip to try to minimize your downtime even further, you can initiate the weapon's reload from within the inventory screen by pressing R to reload the weapon and right-click equip all the attachments without canceling the reload. Just remember, this reload trick only works when the items are already in your inventory. If you happen to initiate a weapon's reload and attempt to pick up and put any items into your inventory, then the reload animation will be canceled if done so before the weapon's reload was completed. On that note though, there is a little tip you can use if you find yourself in a situation where you happen to be reloading and looting around the same time. You can do what is called loot priming, which is done by initiating your reload, and while the weapon is reloading, you can click and hold an item for pickup, but holding onto the item while you wait for the reload to complete before dropping it into your inventory. This takes practice to get the timing right, as each weapon has different reload speeds and may require more or less time in order for the gun to be fully ready for use. With that said, most guns will actually have their rounds chambered before the full reload animation is complete, and by picking up an item as those rounds are chambered, you can perform an animation cancel to bypass the remaining moments of that animation. One last thing on the topic of reloading is by realizing that a fully emptied magazine takes longer to reload than one that has as little as one round left in the chamber. This is because reloading a completely emptied magazine requires that the gun not only be reloaded, but a round be chambered in order for the gun to fire. This is particularly useful to keep in mind in those moments when you're trying to spray down an enemy or a vehicle and need to reload and begin shooting again quickly. The next big tip on inventory management comes by way of the ability to drop controlled amounts of certain items from within your inventory. This refers to things that stack, such as ammo, meds, and equipment. There are two ways that you can drop these items quickly. The first is to hold control and drag an item to the ground. From here, you'll be prompted to select the amount of which you wish to drop. You can either adjust the slider to the desired amount or key in a number within the range provided as needed. The other method is to simply hold Alt and right-click a particular item. Doing so will immediately drop half of whatever amount of the item you are carrying. This can really come in handy in those situations where you're looking to share items with another player without fully depleting resources for yourself. In the case where you want to drop something out of your inventory, you could always just click and drag it onto the ground, but if you wanted to do it instantly, you can hold Alt and then left-click that item to instantly put it onto the ground. Another thing you can do while in the inventory is to manage your weapon skins. If you've customized your weapons from within the in-game lobby, then whichever skin you've chosen will be automatically applied to that weapon upon pickup. In some cases though, you may find a weapon previously held by another player with their preferred skin equipped to that weapon and want to remove it to apply your own. To do this, you'll need to hold Shift and Alt and then left click the weapon from within the inventory screen to remove the equipped weapon skin. To apply your own skin, simply press Alt and then left click the weapon to apply the skin. This next bit might sound silly, but it's something that a lot of longtime players are aware of and that help them to manage their inventory quickly. This is being aware of common items and the exchange rates they have in regards to other items in the inventory. Probably the most common item for this is bandages. Since they usually come in bundles of 5, it's important to know that because of this, it's the exact same weight as one first aid kit. So if you're in a situation in which you want another first aid but don't have the room, then you could simply drop 5 bandages quickly and have the perfect amount of space for that first aid. You can also use this concept in other ways, like in terms of scopes or attachments, like adding a scope to a pistol in order to make room for something else in your inventory. Or by switching a frag grenade into your equipped slot since it weighs more than all the other throwables and can make enough room to pick up some extra ammo or even an energy drink. All in all, I hope these tips have been helpful in learning and understanding both the basics and more advanced mechanics of the PUBG looting system. The fact is, being able to loot quickly and efficiently at all stages of the game is important. Whether that's trying to loot up and survive a hot drop, needing to resupply off a fallen enemy in the mid-game, or trying to get in and out of looting a crate without dying. Seconds really count when you're talking life or death, so shaving off as much time as you can is just one more way you can help yourself make it to that final circle and bring home the win.